This episode of Luthiers Lunch Break is kindly supported by the Guitar Kit Fabric. They're suppliers of not just guitar kits, but lots of different finishing products, accessories, and luthiers tools. There's a link in the description which is valid for the next few weeks to get you 10% off on their site, so do check them out. In this episode, Anka Guitars are going to talk to us about neck finishes and guitarist preference. Lars Grape is back with the final instalment of his fan fret series. I'm going to be using a Guitar Kit Fabric kit guitar to show you how to upgrade your fret markers. Footstep Guitars have got an interesting take on a bolt-on neck. Can't Play Guitar showing us a really clever way of testing out your capacitor values for your tone controls outside of your guitar before you make your final decision. Garland String Instruments is going to introduce French polishing to us. And we've got some absolutely crazy inspiration from Saul Goode guitars. Thanks again to Guitar Kit Fabric for their support. Let's get on with the show.
Have you wondered why guitarists dislike glossy finishes on the back of the neck? There are two types of neck finishes: gloss finish and sanded finish. Glossy finishes create a larger friction area for the skin, while sanded finishes, on the other hand, create micro ridges, reducing the friction point from a single large one to small ones distributed along the surface. It's the same principle of why some truck beds are ridged. Among several reasons, it's easier to slide toolboxes and heavy objects in.
Now, I'm gonna be honest here, there is not a right way to design a body for a guitar, but I can give you some advice. The measurement that I give you in the other series of video kinda stay. If you want the smaller point of a guitar can be roughly 20 centimeter, while the bigger part, usually toward the bridge, is roughly 30. And here the distance between the bridge and the end of the body can be around 10-20 centimeter, depending on the style. But it's kinda up to you what you want for your guitar. There are a lot of design that are bigger, a lot of design that are smaller. You do you. A couple of things though, because of the fan frets and the weird angle that you have, this weird angle line that you have, the multi-scale guitar doesn't set right with the body that is symmetrical and parallel. Think like it doesn't work well with Gretchen style guitar, for example, or with a Telecaster. What you will tend to lean to is more offset design, and you can work with different length for both of the horn. Totally without a plan here, I'm just trying to see if something catch my eyes. And the actual problem that you will have is not on the upper part but on the lower part, because the way of the bridge is, god damn it, this bird, you will want to go with something that kinda go with the same angle of the bridge. Let's see if I can make it work out in some way with a little bit more dramatic line. As you can see, I'm trying to work with the line and kind of following the fan, kind of in the same way that the neck goes, so you have kind of this motion when you look at the design. That being said, you need here to put whatever pickup you want to mount. Now, one thing, and here is for experience. The placement of the pickup is important. I'm not talking about the placement here, but the angle where you place it, because I have a little bit of OCD. I will place the pickup following the fan, which is all great and fantastic, but unless the pickup is built to be mounted like this, you may run in the problem where especially your thinner string will just pass and will touch just one magnet. It will be at the very end of the magnetic field of the pickup, and that is not great because the volume here will drop significantly. Just remember to place the pickup not this angle but 5 degrees, maybe even 10 I will say will be good, but not more than that. The headstone construction is exactly like a normal guitar. Just be aware of one thing, which are the measurement for your tuning machine, because you maybe will have them interfere one with each other, but otherwise it's nothing crazy. And with this I finish with the series, and also the light is going down, so I will see you in the next series, and I hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
So this is a Telecaster kit guitar neck that I've got from Guitar Kit Fabric. I've got videos up showing the whole kit in more detail. If you want to see them, I've linked them in the description to this video. But what we're going to do today is look at how we can spice this up a bit. So I've bought these things called mosaic pins. They're originally designed for people that make knives, and as you can see, it's like a metal tube with a shape that goes inside. I bought a 6mm diameter one, which is the exact size of the fret markers. Double checking the size before I get my drill bit out, and it's really important not to have a bradawl bit with a point on it. You want one that's more like this standard drill bit, because you don't want to accidentally drill out the markers, which is what I'm doing now, and drill into the truss rod which goes down the middle of the guitar. So I'm very carefully just going into the markers very slightly at a time. You can see I don't even have to drill all the way through to crack the marker out, because I can chip it out with a knife at the end. And then just to make sure everything's nice and smooth, I'm going over with a 400 grit paper on all of the holes, and then using a X-Acto blade or scalpel just to go around the edges and make sure there's no rough bits. and then double checking that the mosaic pin fits in. Now the great thing about mosaic pins is there's so many designs, you can get them from loads of places. I think I bought these ones off of Amazon, and then just clamping it in my vise to cut it nice and thin. Now actually, in a previous Luthiers Lunch Break, Aaron from Luthiers Guitars showed us a little jig that he made for cutting up metal bars for inlays, so go and check that out. It was in episode 9. I tried as I got close to the end of the mosaic pin using my soft grip pliers, but actually it wasn't very good because I ended up just chewing up my pliers. Maybe I could have used some metal ones just to hold it a bit tighter. And as you can see, they don't have to be very thick. These are only 2 or 3 millimeters thick each, but then you need to give them a sand to make sure they're nice and smooth. And again, I'm going back with my knife just to chip out any little bits that might be there. And I'm working my way through finer grit sandpaper each time, starting with 600, 800, then 1000. You want to get it a nice, smooth, shiny finish. So to glue them in place, I'm using the black, thick adhesive, the CA glue. Now, the reason I'm starting with thick is I want to drop my pieces in, but I want them to float near the top. So if it was thin, they might sink down into it. And my cut bits of mosaic pins, I just carefully push into the holes because obviously it's a snug fit. And some of that glue is going to go up and fill the gaps around, in this case, the star shape. Mosaic pins come in such a variety of different designs. And just to make sure it sits snugly, slightly below the surface, I'm using a bit of metal rod, or you could use like a nail punch to get it in. I'm wiping away any excess with a cotton bud. And then I'm using the medium thick adhesive to fill up the gaps, again a black one here. And the thing about the medium thick is, even though it is black, if a little bit spills over the top, it kind of looks clear, so it's not the end of the world. But again, try and brush it off with a cotton pad, and then I'm using the kicker to help it dry. Any bits that go over the top you can scrape off with your scalpel. Then I'm going over with the thin glue to fill over the top of the mosaic pins to make a kind of clear coating above it. And what's key, if we look at the side here, is you're probably going to be either level or a little dip. So then I'm using the thick adhesive to put a final layer on top of all of the pins. And I want these to be slightly raised because as it dries, it's going to sink slightly. And at the most, you want it to be level, but you don't want a sunken bit there. You can use a scalpel blade or a standing knife blade just like this to scrape off the excess. And if you're really careful, you don't really go into the wood at all. You've got to be obviously careful because you don't want to leave scratches in the wood surface. Then I go over every single fret, not just the ones with the markers in, every single fret, because you want each fret to look completely even with sandpaper. Now I'm actually using the sandpaper that came supplied by Guitar Kit Fabric, that came in one of their finishing sets, along with a set of filler, dyes and true oil. Starting with 600, 800, 1000, 1200, trying to get everything nice and smooth. And in fact, the way I finished this neck was using the rest of the stain kit. Voila. So thanks again to Guitar Kit Fabric for supporting this month's episode of Luthiers Lunch Break. There's links in the video description, so you can check out their website and products, and there's also a discount code.
Well, hello Luthier Lunch Breakers, and welcome to my workshop on what is probably the first warm day that we've had in the UK this summer, because it's been pretty cold. And with the sun out, it reminded me of a design feature that I've incorporated in the last 11 guitars that I've made. And it's a little bit unusual and perhaps a little bit controversial, but I found it to be extremely useful. And so I thought I'd share it with you today. Now then, why does the sun coming out remind me of this design feature? Well, that's because a few years ago, I decided to build myself a travel guitar after a friend took a guitar on holiday with him. I thought it was a jolly good idea, so I thought I'd build my own. Well, I've actually built 6 of these things now. And the feature that I'm on about is the way the neck is attached. And you can see that I've got what is just a fairly standard roofing bolt holding this neck on. And to be perfectly honest with you, it works so well on my travel guitars, I decided to use it on my conventional guitars. So here I've got two guitars that I've made recently. This is my Tele Scraps caster, a Telecaster made from scraps that I found in and around the workshop. And yeah, sure enough, there you see it. There's my roofing bolt sunk into the back of the body. Just prior to that guitar, I made this bass guitar, long neck bass, and there you go. There's the roofing bolt. So all of these guitars, and in fact all the 11 guitars that I've made since making the first travel guitar, have necks attached with a single roofing bolt. Now, over the period of time that I've been making those 11 guitars with this design feature, I've sort of developed a technique which I shall go through with you in a minute. But there's a few things that need to be done in preparation. The first thing is, let's just have a quick look at the hardware. This is a standard 8M roofing bolt, which you can pick up in any DIY store. I'm always on the lookout for little packs. And this is an insert usually used, I believe, in sort of furniture building, and that screws into there. And you can pick those up in eBay or in a good quality DIY store. That goes into the neck. This goes through the body to hold the neck on. Now then, one of the most important templates I use is this one here. This is a complete scale length neck template. It's got the nut at one end, it's got the bridge at the other, it's got the positions of the frets just marked on, just as a guide, and it's also got the positions of the pickups, and it has a position of where the bolt will go. And this helps me when I'm routing the channel for the truss rod. I need to make sure that I don't go anywhere near where the insert is going to be. Once I've routed the body for the neck, I need to use this little template here to indicate where the hole is going to be. So that just slots into the recess. Now, I actually cut a slope on the end of the neck, a 14-degree slope, and I also route a corresponding 14-degree angle in the body. Okay, so I've used my dovetail bit in the router to just route out a bit of an angle there, and I've just also curved the end of this neck. So now that should fit nicely into there. My idea is that pulls the neck down against the body so it doesn't lift up. And to help me cut the end of the neck, I use a little block like this, just set at a 14-degree angle. So with the body routed for the neck, I then go through my 7-step process. So, step 1, mark the bolt hole position on the body. Step 2, drill a 2mm pilot hole through the body. Step 3, I fix the neck in position, ensuring it's fitting really snugly into the body, and I quite often compress it using my bench dogs. I turn the body over so that I'm looking through the back of the body, and I drill a hole through the pilot hole and into the neck to mark a position on the neck. Now, number 4, I go back to the body, I take the neck out, I use a 20mm Forstner bit on the drill press to create a shallow recess in the back of the body, and this is just to sink the bolt head below the back of the body. Step 5, I drill a 9mm hole through the body. Now I'm using an 8M bolt, so the 9mm hole gives me some movement for adjustment. Step 6, I drill a 10mm hole in the back of the neck for the insert. Now obviously you've got to be very careful you don't go right through the neck and through the fretboard. So you need to go through just the depth of the insert. And I usually use a countersink bit just to go round the edge of that hole so that the insert sinks right into the neck. Step 7, I screwed the threaded insert into the neck using an Allen key, making sure I go in as square as I can. Step 8 is just a question of making sure the roofing bolt is the right length. So it needs to go through the body and into the insert, but not too far. Otherwise you end up pushing your fretboard off at the other end. And then it's just a question of fitting the neck. And we have the neck on the guitar. The beauty of this approach, particularly for a travel guitar, is you can just take the neck off really quickly. So the first thing you just need to do is loosen the strings. Now, if I'm taking this guitar on holiday, I have just a cover that I put over it. But for the purposes of just demonstrating this, I'm just going to just leave those loose. So then it's just a question of undoing that. Off it comes, and then the neck just folds out, and it's really easy.
I want to let you know that you can find links to all of the different contributors in the video description below. Links off to their YouTube channels and their other social media pages and websites. There's also a link to a Luthiers Lunch Break playlist. You can subscribe to that to see all the past episodes and have notifications of the new ones. And if you're enjoying the show, don't forget to hit like, share this with your friends. You can give me a super thanks if you really like what I'm doing. But what would be great is if you subscribe to my channel, Devil & Sons Guitars. Okay, let's get on with the show.
Hello again everybody. This week is a little bit different from my usual kind of content, but if you listen carefully you'll find I do mention one or two everyday objects which are used in what I'm about to show you. So let's get into it. I've got this guitar body on my bench and I'm doing a refinish of the top. The back and sides are lacquered. But I like to use French polish on the top of nearly all the instruments I make, mainly because sound-wise it's, I think, by a long chalk, the best finish to use. So I've taken the guitar apart to make it easier. Here's the neck. And I thought I'd take the opportunity to not even introduce French polish to you, let alone a tutorial. First of all, it's, this isn't the right format. There are millions of tutorials out on YouTube, and I'm by no means an expert. I'm still a beginner at it, but I thought it might be worth showing you, in case you're interested in getting into it, how little you really need in the way of equipment. I mean, certainly nothing like what you'd need to spray, especially if you're using sort of noxious solvent-based sprays and nothing water-based or alcohol-based. This is me at the end of the take. Actually, I'm interjecting here. The reason I'm doing a refinish at all is because shellac is not the most robust of finishes, and I took this guitar to the show last year, and a few people picked it up and played it, and it got a few fingernail marks and scratches. So to get it back to kind of showroom condition, I'm redoing the top finish, and that's one advantage of a shellac finish. You can first of all, each coat blends or melts even into the coat below, so you end up with what is effectively a single layer. That means that it's very easily repairable. You can go back and just go over it and refinish, and it becomes part of the same finish as you had originally. So basically, the core ingredients are shellac dissolved in alcohol, and the alcohol I use it's basically similar to meths in England. It's over here we have, this is fuel alcohol, which can also be used for cleaning. It says there's a kind of lower grade which is cleaning only. You need fuel alcohol that will burn. That shows it's got enough ethanol in it, because there's always a bit of water. And meths in fact has methyl alcohol as well, which is poisonous. So we don't even have it over here, but this is just pure alcohol with whatever traces of water there are in it. So that's the main ingredient, shellac dissolved in alcohol, and there are plenty of tutorials telling you how to make it up. I have a small dropper bottle similar to the shellac one with the same alcohol in it, because when you're padding it on, you need to have a few drops of alcohol. I use baby oil as part of the process, just as a lubricant. And the other main thing you have is the pad, which is just made out of old pillowcases or sheets for the main surface. They should be very well washed and finely woven cotton, so not t-shirt material, but something like a sheet or a tablecloth. Linen is good. And then on the inside you have a sort of more absorbent stuff, which can be wool or sort of cotton. T-shirt material would work inside the pad for that, and that is just to soak up a little bit of the shellac and alcohol mixture. So yes, I won't take it out and start to use it because I will run out of time. And the traditional grain filler used with French polish is pumice. So pumice powder, and the finer you can get the better. And I put it in this little salt shaker, because you need tiny amounts of it. So you basically, I'm not going to do it because I don't need any now, but when you just tap a little bit of the powder onto the surface, which is one or two wash coats of shellac, and then you use a special pad, which is why I've got the pad is the same, but it's dedicated to using the pumice. And this is why I keep them separate here, because the pumice gets into the pad, and you don't want to do that when you're actually polishing. But for the grain fill, you basically work the pumice and the bit of shellac that's in the wash coats and the wood surface together into a kind of slurry on a microscopic level, and that helps fill all the gaps in the grain. So that's the traditional way of doing it. You can of course use modern grain fillers as well, and sand those down afterwards and then start your polishing process. So really the main things you need for polishing are the shellac mix, alcohol, and a pad. Not everybody uses oil, and I don't always, but it's handy to have some, and you need a sort of something like a mineral oil, or olive oil is another good one. I have used that. And that's it. So just, as I say, not even an introduction to French polishing, but just a sort of overview of what you need. And I encourage you to give it a go. It's sort of a Zen meditative process. It's difficult to get right. I won't pretend that it is easy, but it's quite a rewarding thing to do. And as I say, sound-wise, it's I think far and away the best finish for acoustic instruments. So there we are. Well, that was it for this time round. So until next time, goodbye for now.
Yeah, g'day, this is Corey, and this is how I make my silly crazy necks. I like a lot of contrast in my necks, so I try to pick timber that I know is going to work well together and it's going to look really good together too. I use decking timber for the darker timbers, and it comes with oil on it, so I need to plane or sand that off, which is what I'm doing right here. Whatever the planer doesn't get, the sander gets. And I'm cutting a sliver off here, and then I'll be gluing accent pieces on to make it back to the thickness that it was. Cut them in half because it's easy to clamp up, and I get to gluing. And you'll need a good quality glue, and I use Tight Bond, but you know, you can use Gorilla or whatever. This jig keeps everything at 90 degrees really well. Clamp both ways. But you do sometimes get like a little overhang, which I'll cut off with the bandsaw and run through the thicknesser again in a minute. So after planing and sanding again, go back to gluing. Most of the time with these necks is gluing, clamping, sanding and planing, which I'm thankful to have the tools that I have, otherwise they'd take a lot longer than what they already do. So these little pieces are going to be the heel of the neck and where the scarf joint's going to meet the rest of the neck. Use a drop saw to get the ends at 90 degrees. And then I start cutting the tiles, which are about 8mm thick when I start, and then they end up to be about 6mm thick once they're planed down. And after this, I cut the scarf and measure that. Use a sander to get it nice and flat and put it aside for when the time comes to glue it all together. So these tiles, they get glued up in steps. That way I can keep an eye on the pattern that I'm doing, and it cuts down on waste. So after they're all glued up, running through the planer again, and then I mark where I want to cut with the bandsaw for these pieces. This is why I glue them all up at one time, because it saves a lot of mucking about when I put it back over on the jig. So once that's all done, I glue it up, make sure it's nice and flat. If it's not nice and flat, it goes through the sander. I ended up cutting the other end of the board and then glued it up to the neck again. I use this Perspex template just to see how much room I've got for when I have to glue the headstock on. I like adding accents to my headstocks. It just makes them stand out a little bit more, so that's what I'm doing here. Similar pattern, and I think it turned out great, but you'll have to wait and see that. Glue it all together again. As I said, plenty of tight bond, plenty of clamping, plenty of time, plenty of patience. This piece here is going to be the headstock, so I cut it out and then make sure it's all flat with the drum sander. Make sure the neck's all nice and flat. And then I ended up cutting a fretboard off it. Made sure it's all nice and flat before I glue the scarf onto the headstock. And yeah, it's just a matter of clamping it to my bench, making sure it didn't move. Anyway, catch us next time for part 2.
Thanks again to the Guitar Kit Fabric for supporting today's show, and don't forget to check out the links in the description for kits, paints, varnishes and much more, including luthier tools.